February the 1st. It seemed like a normal morning in Myanmar. Physical education teacher Kain Hin Wai was recording one of her workout videos near a checkpoint leading to the Parliament building, just as she'd been doing for almost a year. She didn't realize her camera was about to capture a pivotal moment, not just for her, but for the whole country. A convoy of black vehicles driving up to the checkpoint. It marked the start of a coup by the leaders of the army. Elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi and other senior officials were detained and a state of emergency declared. All communication services were shut down, but that didn't stop people taking to the streets. Having lived under military rule for half a century, many were determined to hold on to the democratic civilian government they'd gained in 2011. I'm James Bays at UN headquarters in New York. Myanmar has been at the top of the headlines since the coup on the 1st of February and the subsequent violent crackdown by the military. The international community has responded with strong words, but no action. Two key figures in the efforts to bring international actions against Myanmar's military are Salai Muang Tang San, better known as Dr.SaSa, a close aide to Aung San Suu Kyi, who escaped the arrests ordered by the junta, and Tom Andrews, special rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Myanmar. On this edition of Talk to Al Jazeera, we connect with them to discuss what can be done to re-establish democratic rule in Myanmar. Dr.SaSa, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera. Can I start by asking you to describe how you see right now the state of affairs in your country?
It is a chaos and it's desperate. It needs immediate actions, and it needs no more words about its actions, because the state defense forces that should be protecting the people of Myanmar are now against the people of Myanmar with smoking guns. So the 54 million of people in Myanmar are now under siege with smoking guns.
Let me take you back to the election, which took place in November. You were the campaign manager for Aung San Suu Kyi's party in that election. Was the election free and fair, or were there problems as the military claim?
International community and international observer, including local observer, and the people of Myanmar have spoken loud and clear that it was free and fair and democratic. The people of Myanmar have spoken loud and clear that no longer we don't need the military regime. The people of Myanmar, particularly these new generations, they don't want to live under any sort of military control of our freedom. And they realize that they have lost heavily to Democratic Party that it was elected by the people of Myanmar for the people of Myanmar.
Let me take you back to the last days of January. There was lots of speculation that the military might try something. In those last days of January, how worried were you about the prospect of a coup?
They were well prepared, and they are smart because they know that they totally lost the support of the people of Myanmar. And they know that they are having the people of Myanmar with them anymore. So they cannot see their future, and they cannot see their future politics in the military. They have, in that way, they have violated the constitution that they have written by themselves, for themselves. So it was a very real that there was a desperate attempt to stolen democracy and the freedom for us by stalling election with gunpoint. But of course, we never think that they'll be stupid enough to take this kind of military coup, because it's not only bad for the country of Myanmar, it's bad for them. They will be trapped themselves in the near future. They will realize that they have made a huge mistake. I think that these military generals are not well informed about what is happening around the world in this 21st century. They underestimate the people of Myanmar. They undermine the people of Myanmar. They think that the people of Myanmar will be just, okay, that's okay. We are not okay. We never say that's okay to stolen election results.
Tell me about the day of the coup. When did you first realize what was going on?
We wake up in the early morning of 1st February. We realized that all our phone was dead. We cannot make any call. And we realized that all televisions and every signal was dead. And I was surprised when I looked from my window. I saw all the military armament surrounding us. And those the parliamentarian members living in municipal building. And we were surrounded by those guns, armed forces, and all the parliamentary buildings, all the place where the ministers were living, and include our San Suu Kyi, our state councillor, and the presidents. They're all being surrounded by smoking guns. And we realized something was wrong, and it was already military coup happened. Of course, it was scary in the way because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know we'll be all die. We don't know they will all kill us. We know that they determined, they were prepared to destroy us completely.
You were someone who was likely to end up in the cabinet if there wasn't a coup, so you must have been very concerned about your own safety. Tell us how you got out of the country.
I was told by one of the president's office close aide to escape as soon as possible because I need to be the voice and the face of the people of Myanmar. And then I was acting as taxi driver, and it was tough. It was tough. I thought I would die of that situation because it was extreme situation. After doing that 3 days and 3 nights, I am now relatively in a safe place.
And you're now in a secret location, but your job is to try and alert the world and get international reaction to what has happened. Let's move to the international reaction so far. First, from the regional countries, ASEAN. Are you happy with the way they have responded?
No. It's very disappointing to see again and again that our friends, our brothers, sisters, we are 10 nations in ASEAN. If we are 10 brothers, sisters living in the same family. But if one is behaving very bad and killing its own children, who should be protected by him or her? Killing its own people and committing crime against humanity again and again. In 1998, thousands of students were slaughtered. Again, 2007, the same thing happened. 2007, a lot of Buddhist monks were slaughtered. And again, 2017, again, Rohingya, they were slaughtered. And about 1 million people are pushed to the sea. Now, again and again, they're killing. Already, they killed more than 50 people. And this crime against humanity has been happening on the watches of ASEAN leaders.
Let us talk about the reaction here where I am at the United Nations. We'll come to the Security Council in a moment, but we had a dramatic moment here at the UN in the General Assembly when Myanmar's ambassador, and many people thought he was going to start explaining the military's position, but instead stood up to the military in the UN General Assembly. What was your reaction to that speech?
We salute Ambassador Wu Jong-un. The people of Myanmar respect and salute the bravery of the people, the bravery of Wu Jong-un, our ambassador, on the face of this military junta. If any true diplomatic who represent the people of Myanmar, the country of Myanmar, to any Burmese embassy around the world, must stand with the people of Myanmar, not again with these illegitimate, illegal regimes. In the coming days, we are going to form unity government. In that government will be the government for the people, by the people.
I know you've written a letter, because I've got a copy of it, to the United Nations. You're calling for an arms embargo and designated sanctions from the UN Security Council. You know that's unlikely to get through the UN Security Council because China and Russia are likely to be opposed to that. Do you have any other options to try and get sanctions on the generals?
Yeah, I wrote 3 points. Most important one will be, one was the responsibility to protect. We want UN Security Council to consider protecting the people of Myanmar, because the one who have the responsibility, that is defense forces of Myanmar, are responsible to protect the people of Myanmar. But now they are killing the people of Myanmar. The second point, no country in the world should sell weapons again to this, the Tamador, the military, because each bullet that they sell is to kill our people. Each weapon they sell is to oppress us. The third one is to put economic sanction as tough as possible to these generals, not only just individual. What that they would do right now is the sanction is the generals, individuals, we are sanctioned. But now we need all their companies, their lucrative businesses, their gas and oil, all of them has to be sanctioned.
The generals, of course, ran your country for very many years. They are used to international isolation in the past. Even if you get all the things that you want, how are you going to get them to give up power? What's different now?
Now you may know, you may aware that there's so many army inside. They don't like these generals. You know, handful of people who are enjoying in this injustice. You know, there is a 500,000 armed forces, but in 500,000 armed forces in Myanmar, there's only few of them who are bad, who are so bad, evils, and they are the one who is controlling it. So if we can provide an alternative way, alternative path, they all will come to us. So we don't need to have any war anymore. We just need to create some alternative strategy where all these armed forces who are being abused will come to us.
Can I ask you what information you have of your colleagues who are being detained? Aung San Suu Kyi, the president, and others who are being detained right now. What do you know of their condition and how they're being treated?
Illegally detained by this government, it is unacceptable. Till today, we don't know where they kept. We don't know where they are. We don't know if our state councillor, Aung San Suu Kyi, is eating well or her health, including our president. Even her own lawyer not allowed to see her. And this is unacceptable violation of human rights, the rights of individuals.
You, as you're going about your efforts trying to rally the international community, you're clearly watching the pictures that are coming out of your country, and you're watching the young people, and it is mainly young people who are on the streets. For example, there was the protester who went by the English name Angel, who was wearing the T-shirt, "Everything will be okay," she was then shot dead by the military. Tell me your view as you watch these pictures.
It's heartbreaking to see, not just heartbreaking, it's just echoing. To see a young girl standing on the bus stand was shot dead. It is hard for me to understand this inhuman behavior of this military junta. Yet, there's no action. There's no action. No one is taking action.
Another strong voice on Myanmar is the UN Special Rapporteur, Tom Andrews. He's an independent expert appointed by the UN Human Rights Council. Previously, he was a US congressman. Can I ask you whether what we're seeing in the country since the coup, whether these amount to war crimes?
Well, listen, I have made it very clear that there is mounting evidence that at the very least we're talking about crimes against humanity. These attacks are very systematic. They're very widespread. It's very clear by the nature of these attacks that there is a central command that is behind them. These are clearly non-combatants that are being attacked, injured, and killed. So all of these factors make it clear to me, and what I suggested to the United Nations Human Rights Council is that while this needs to be adjudicated, of course, in a court, in my opinion, looking at the facts as I've seen them, these are crimes against humanity and should be investigated and adjudicated as such.
Let's go back to the election in the country in November last year. The military say they have staged this coup because there was fraud in that election. Is there any evidence of that you have seen? And if there isn't, why do you think the military is really acting now?
Look, I don't know if there were irregularities or not in the election. Those who were observing the election very closely say that it was essentially a very fair election in terms of the process that was involved. But what I do know is that having a complaint about the way an election was conducted is in no way a justification for committing an illegal coup d'etat. It was clearly an excuse. This is clearly something that they wanted to do, notwithstanding what happened or didn't happen in an election. They violated their own rules. They set the course, and of course the Constitution provided them with enormous power. They controlled key ministries. They controlled 25% of the seats in the parliament, which made sure that the parliament could not change the Constitution. They had enormous wealth because of the enormous amount of wealth and power coming into their pockets as a result of these business conglomerates that they control, and they were basically unaccountable because of all of those resources flowing into their pockets. So, really, it's an amazing thing to think that they would overturn a government that provided them with such advantages. Many were, of course, very critical of that, and that they would violate their own rules in committing this in this coup. It's a violation of law, and the law was written by themselves.
Why then do you think they acted?
You know, I think that's a good question, James, and for the life of me, I don't know. Perhaps even the enormous amount of power that they have was just not enough. They wanted complete and total power, that they didn't want to have to deal with anyone asking questions or raising points of view other than what they want to hear. I don't know.
Dr.SaSa told us that he felt the military had completely underestimated the people of Myanmar, and particularly the young people. Tell us what you think when you watch these pictures that we're seeing every day of these very brave, peaceful protests.
It is completely remarkable. I'm in awe as I see the pictures, as I watch the evidence of heroism, great courage, great tenacity, great creativity. As I see these young people out onto the streets and engaging in tactics that are creative. There's not just one thing that they're doing many things. And so this Generation Z, as they're called, young people under 25 years of age, they're clearly on the forefront of this, but it's not just Generation Z. All generations are involved in this. People of all ages, all professions. I mean, to see Buddhist monks and Muslim clerics walking side by side, bankers, construction workers, educators, healthcare workers, it is extraordinary to see the unity within this country.
These people are being killed, they're being attacked, and increasing numbers of them are being detained. We had the democratically elected politicians. We've got lots of protesters now in custody. Tell me what we know about the fate of those detainees. I believe there are some reports of torture.
We don't know a lot because they are being detained in various locations. This is very secretive. And by the way, this is very, very widespread, this net that has been yielded here by the regime. Of course, we know the most famous leaders, Aung San Suu Kyi, Win Myint, and others, leaders of the country who are in detention. But there are people from all walks of life that are being terrorized, arrested in the middle of the night, taken places where their families don't know, conditions they don't know, charges they don't know.
You've been doing this job for about a year now, but you know the country very, very well. The military used to run everything right the way from 1962 to 2011, keeping the country in total isolation. It seems they want to go back to total isolation. Do you think that's possible?
No, it's not possible. It's a fantasy. Don't get me wrong. They're going to do everything possible to make sure that the country becomes as isolated as it has ever been. But you can't put the genie back in the bottle, particularly young people. who have had a taste of freedom, who are very savvy with the tools of communication that we now have. They're not going back. I mean, they've told me, they've heard the stories from their parents, from their grandparents, and they will not go back to those days, and they'll do everything possible to make sure that this coup fails.
Let's look at the international reaction now. You are the special rapporteur of the United Nations. Now, that's an independent role. You can criticise everyone if you want, including the UN itself. So let's start there. The Secretary General has issued statements. Normally he says he's concerned. He's now saying he's appalled. The Security Council's put out 2 statements condemning what's going on, yet the killing continues. Is it time for much more than words now?
I think it is. I think it is past time for more than words, and there's a variety of options. Now, the first option, obviously, would be for the Security Council of the United Nations to act. They could create and organize and manage a unified set of sanctions, tough sanctions, targeted sanctions. They could have an international arms embargo. They could refer this atrocity to the International Criminal Court for investigation and prosecution. That has not happened. It may happen, but it hasn't happened. So what do we do in the meantime? I think what we do is encourage individual nations to establish tough, focused sanctions regimes, cut off the revenue flow to the junta, cut off their supplies of weapons to whatever extent that is possible. And what I think is critical here is for those actions to be unified, to be coordinated, so that they have the greatest possible collective punch on the resources and the capacity of the junta to continue.
And we've seen some Western nations who support that course of action. But the regional grouping ASEAN and the regional power China don't seem to support the idea of sanctions at all. That's a problem, isn't it?
Well, it is, obviously, because, of course, in the case of China, they have the generals have always hid behind the protection of China and the Security Council. China has traditionally been a source of weapons and trade and investment. But here's the thing, and you need to look carefully at the signals being sent from the region and from China. And those signals, well, they're encouraging, even though they're modest. The fact that UN leaders are rejecting what's happened, criticizing what's happened, the fact that China could call for the release of political prisoners. I mean, these are critical comments that come from neighbors that traditionally are not critical. It is in their own interest to not have a conflagration going on right in their neighborhood, right in the midst of ASEAN, right over the border from China.
What about the argument that some people use that any sort of sanctions won't just harm the military, they'll harm the people as well?
When I talk to people on the ground in Myanmar, and I explain how we are working very hard to make sure that that the impact on the people of Myanmar is minimal, they'll say, look, we're being greatly impacted right now by conditions. And listen, we've gone for a long time with very, very little. We're fighting for our future. And we're willing to do what it takes to win this ordeal and to make sure that our future and our children's life is much better than it would be under authoritarian rule. So they're saying, look, we're willing to sacrifice. We're willing to do what it takes. But of course, what we're very cognizant of is that there be minimum harm, minimum damage in any economic sanctions regime to the people of the country.
You know the size of the army in Myanmar, and you've already talked about the scale of corruption in the country. If the economy begins to hurt, one assumes all of the corruption money doesn't just go to the top generals. There is money going at various levels throughout the military hierarchy. Do you think there's a possibility the military might start to split?
I would not be surprised if those that are being asked to treat their fellow citizens with such brutality would stop and question and not follow those orders. I certainly hope, and we have sent very clear messages, that no matter where you are on the chain of command, you are responsible for your actions, and you will be held accountable for your actions. So I'm hoping that at every level of the chain of command, if you're asked to shoot innocent protesters, innocent, peaceful protesters, that you refuse to do so.
Among all of those detained, of course, one figure is by far the best known, Aung San Suu Kyi. And I know you have known her a long time. Do you think there's less sympathy for her in the international community because of the events in recent years where she hasn't spoken out about the plight of the Rohingya?
I think the focus of the international community is really where it ought to be, not on any one individual or political group for that matter, but on the people of Myanmar and what this means for the people of Myanmar. And I think that's a very, very important thing that we do, that we keep that focus on the public and understand and advocate on their behalf and understand the implications for them and their children.
Tom Andrews, UN Special Rapporteur for Myanmar, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you.